The day Yuna's life changed forever began with a simple holographic display. She stood in the assignment hall with 200 other Valari medics, all of them watching the floating screen with nervous eyes. Names appeared in pairs. One Valar, one combat partner from another species. The Interspecies Alliance program had become mandatory since the war began. There was no escaping it. Yuna watched as her friends received their assignments. Jiwoo was paired with a calm Tirani engineer. Mingi got a gentle Kashari pilot. Both of them looked relieved. The Tirani and Kishari were peaceful species, known for their quiet ways and respect for Valari sensitivity. Then Yuna's name appeared on the screen. Beside it was a single word that made her silver blood run cold. Human. A soft gasp went through the crowd. Other Valari looked at her with pity in their large violet eyes. Some stepped away from her, as if the assignment itself was a disease they might catch. Yuna felt her 2 hearts beating fast in her chest. Her hands began to shake. Of all the species in the galaxy, she had been paired with the one species every Valari child learned to fear. Humans came from Earth, a planet so dangerous that other species called it a death world. Everything on that planet tried to kill its inhabitants. The weather was violent. The animals were predators. Even the plants could be poisonous. And somehow, humans had not only survived there, but had conquered their world completely. The stories about humans spread across every corner of the galaxy. They could survive injuries that would kill any other species. They bonded with predators and called them pets. They consumed poison for fun and called it spice. They threw themselves into danger instead of running from it. They smiled by showing their teeth, like animals preparing to bite. Yuna remembered sitting on her grandmother's lap as a child, listening to Elder Sora's warnings. Her grandmother was a respected healer who had lived through many wars. She had seen humans in battle once, long ago, and she never forgot it. They are broken creatures. Elder Sora had whispered to young Yuna. Something went wrong in their evolution. They feel everything too strongly. They burn too brightly. And if you get too close to them, they will drag you into their fire and burn you too. Those words echoed in Yuna's mind now as she walked toward the meeting room where she would meet her assigned partner. Her legs felt weak. Her telepathic senses were already picking up strange, emotional signatures from behind the door, loud, chaotic, overwhelming. She had never been near a human before. Valari avoided them whenever possible. Their emotions were too intense, too raw, too painful to feel through telepathic connection. Being near a human was like standing next to a sun. You could feel the heat from far away. Yuna stopped at the door. She closed her eyes and tried to calm herself. She was a trained medic. She had studied for years. She had sworn an oath to heal all species without judgment. But right now, she wanted to run away and never look back. The door opened. The human standing inside was tall. Much taller than Yuna had expected. His skin was a warm brown color, and his dark hair was cut short in military style. He had a scar running down the left side of his face, from his eyebrow to his jaw. His eyes were dark and deep, and when they looked at her, Yuna felt like he could see right through her. But what hit her hardest was his emotional presence. It crashed into her telepathic senses like a wave hitting a small boat. She felt determination, curiosity, a deep tiredness, old pain, and something else she could not identify. All of it swirling together, barely contained beneath a calm surface. "I'm Taiho," he said. His voice was deeper than she expected. He extended his hand toward her in what she knew was a human greeting gesture. "I'll keep you safe." Yuna did not take his hand. She could not. Touching a human would mean feeling all those emotions even more strongly. She was afraid it might break her mind. "I am Yuna," she said quietly. Her voice sounded small and weak in her own ears. "I am your assigned medic." If Taiho was offended by her refusal to touch him, he did not show it. He simply lowered his hand and nodded. "I read your file. You're one of the best healers in your class. I'm lucky to have you as my partner." Yuna did not feel lucky. She felt terrified. Over the next 3 days. She learned things about her human partner that did nothing to calm her fears. She learned that Taiho had fought in 12 major battles. She learned that he had been wounded 9 times and had refused to stop fighting each time. She learned that he had once walked 20 miles through enemy territory while carrying 2 injured soldiers on his back. She also learned that he never slept more than 4 hours at a time, that he checked his weapons 3 times before every mission, that he positioned himself between any threat and the people he was protecting, even in simple training exercises. "Why do you always stand in front?" she asked him once during training. Taiho looked at her with those unreadable dark eyes. "Because that's where the danger comes from. If I'm in front, I see it first. I handle it first. You stay safe behind me, but you could get hurt." He shrugged. It was a simple movement, but Yuna felt a flash of emotion from him that made no sense to her. Acceptance, peace. That's the job. I get hurt so you don't have to. Yuna could not understand this way of thinking. The Valari believed in preservation, in survival, in avoiding danger whenever possible. They did not throw themselves toward death. They ran from it. But humans were different. They had evolved on a world where running was not always possible. Sometimes the only way to survive was to fight, to stand your ground, to become more dangerous than the thing trying to kill you. As Yuna watched Taiho prepare for their first real mission together, she wondered if she would survive this assignment. Not because she feared the enemy they would face, but because she feared the burning star of emotion she had been chained to. She feared the human. Their first mission together was supposed to be simple. A refugee station near the border needed medical supplies and a security check. No combat was expected. It was the kind of assignment they gave to new partner teams so they could learn to work together in a safe environment. Yuna was grateful for this. She had spent the entire transport ship ride sitting as far from Taiho as possible. His emotional presence still overwhelmed her telepathic senses. Every time he moved or spoke, she felt flashes of his feelings. It was exhausting. Taiho did not seem bothered by her distance. He sat quietly, checking his equipment, reading reports on his small datapad. Sometimes he looked at her, and she quickly looked away. She did not want to meet those dark, intense eyes. The refugee station was a sad place. Thousands of aliens from dozens of species had fled here to escape the Dominion's attacks on their home worlds. They lived in crowded rooms, sleeping on thin mats, eating simple food that was never enough. Children cried for parents they had lost. Old people sat alone with empty eyes, remembering homes that no longer existed. Yuna threw herself into her medical work. This was what she was trained for. This was where she felt safe and useful. She healed wounds, treated illnesses, and spoke gentle words to frighten patients. For a few hours, she almost forgot about the human following her like a silent shadow. Taiho spent his time differently. Yuna noticed him talking with the station's security officers, checking door locks and window seals, asking questions about patrol schedules and emergency exits. He moved through the station with careful eyes, looking at everything, missing nothing. "Why are you so worried?" Yuna asked him during a short break. "Command said this area is safe." Taiho's jaw tightened slightly. Safe is a word people use when they haven't been attacked yet. "I like to be ready for when that changes." Yuna thought he was being paranoid. Humans were known for seeing danger everywhere. It was part of their broken psychology, their inability to feel peace. She was wrong. The attack came just after midnight. Yuna was sleeping in a small room near the medical bay when the first explosion shook the station. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered red. Through the walls, she heard screaming and weapons fire. She ran into the hallway and immediately felt the wave of terror crashing through her telepathic senses. Thousands of refugees, all afraid at once. The emotional weight nearly knocked her down. She grabbed the wall to keep from falling. Then Taiho was there. He appeared from the smoke and chaos like he had been waiting for this moment his entire life. His face was calm. His movements were fast but controlled. He had a rifle in his hands and 3 extra weapons on his belt. "Stay behind me," he said. His voice was steady, like they were discussing the weather instead of running for their lives. "We need to get to the medical bay. There will be wounded." They ran together through the station. Dominion raiders were everywhere. They were tall, thin creatures with sharp claws and cold eyes. They killed without mercy, cutting down refugees who could not fight back. Yuna watched Taiho fight. She had expected brutality. She had expected wild violence and bloodlust. That was what all the stories said about humans. They were savage, animalistic, dangerous beyond control. But what she saw was different. Taiho moved like water flowing around stones. Every shot he fired was precise. Every movement had purpose. He never wasted bullets. He never hit anything he did not mean to hit. When refugees ran past them in panic, he shouted warnings in 3 different languages, guiding them toward safe exits. His emotions hit Yuna through her telepathy, and they surprised her. She felt focus, determination, protectiveness so strong it almost felt like physical heat. But she did not feel joy. She did not feel bloodlust. She felt something much stranger. She felt fear. Not fear for himself. Fear for the refugees. Fear for her. Fear that he would not be fast enough, strong enough, good enough to save everyone who needed saving. They reached the medical bay corridor. Just as a young child wandered into the crossfire, it was a small Kishari girl, maybe 4 years old, standing in the middle of the hallway with tears running down her fuzzy face. She was calling for her mother. She did not understand the danger. Time seemed to slow down. Yuna saw a Dominion Raider raise his weapon toward the child. She opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out. There was no way to reach the girl in time. She was going to watch a child die. Taiho moved. He threw himself across the open space, running faster than Yuna had ever seen anything move. He reached the child just as the Raider fired. He wrapped his body around her, making himself a living shield, and took 2 plasma shots directly to his back. Yuna heard him grunt in pain. She smelled burning flesh, but he did not fall. He did not drop the child. He kept running, carrying the girl to safety behind a solid wall, and only then did he put her down. "Get her to the medical bay," he said to Yuna. His voice was tight with pain, but still steady, still calm. "I'll hold them here, Taiho. You're back. Go." She took the child and ran. Behind her, she heard more weapons fire. She heard Taiho fighting alone against enemies who had just seen what he was willing to do to protect others. Later, after the Alliance reinforcements arrived and drove the raiders away, Yuna found Taiho sitting against a wall. His back was a mess of burned flesh and torn uniform. He should have been screaming in pain. He should have been unconscious. But he was awake, watching the door, still ready to fight if needed. She knelt beside him and placed her hands on his wounds. Her healing energy flowed into him, repairing the damage, easing the pain. As she worked, she felt his emotions more clearly than ever before. Pain, yes. So much pain. But also relief. Desperate, overwhelming relief that everyone in his care had survived. "Why?" she asked him. Her voice shook. "You could have died. That child was not even your species. Why did you risk everything for her?" Taiho looked at her with genuine confusion in his dark eyes, like she had asked the strangest question he had ever heard. "That's what you do," he said simply. "You protect people who cannot protect themselves. That's the whole point." Yuna stared at him for a long moment. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. Broken creatures, burning too brightly. But maybe Yuna thought, maybe burning brightly was not always a bad thing. Maybe sometimes the galaxy needed that kind of fire. She continued healing him in silence. Something had changed inside her. A small crack had appeared in the wall of fear she had built. Around her heart, the weeks after the refugee station attack changed everything for Yuna. She still kept some distance from Taiho. His emotions were still loud and overwhelming to her telepathic senses. But now she watched him with different eyes. Curious eyes. Eyes that wanted to understand instead of just fear. She began to notice small things about him. Things that did not match the stories she had heard about humans all her life. Every morning, Taiho woke up before sunrise to exercise. But before he began his training, he sat in silence for 10 minutes, breathing slowly, looking at the stars through the window. Yuna learned this was called meditation. Humans did this to calm their minds and find peace. She had not known humans ever wanted peace. During mealtimes, Taiho always made sure everyone else had food before he ate. Sometimes he gave his rations away entirely to hungry refugees and told others he was not hungry. Yuna knew this was a lie. She could feel his hunger through their growing telepathic connection. But he hid it and smiled and pretended. Everything was fine. She watched him interact with alien species he had never met before. He learned their greetings. He asked about their customs. He remembered names and faces and small details from conversations. When a young Turani boy lost his father in the attack, Taiho sat with him for 3 hours, saying nothing, just being present. The boy fell asleep leaning against Taiho's shoulder. One evening, Una found Taiho teaching a group of refugee children how to play a human game. They were using a ball made from wrapped cloth. The children were laughing and chasing each other while Taiho pretended to be slow and clumsy so they could catch him. She felt his emotions from across the room. Warmth, gentleness, a deep, aching love for these children he had only known for days. But underneath it all, she felt something else, something darker, a shadow hiding beneath the light grief. Yuna did not ask him about it that night. She was not sure she had the right to know his secrets, but she thought about it constantly. What could make a human carry such old, deep sadness while still finding the strength to smile and play with children? The answer came a week later. She could not sleep. The memories of the attack still haunted her dreams. She walked outside the barracks to look at the stars and found Taiho already there. He was sitting on a low wall, staring up at the distant suns and planets. His emotional presence was different than she had ever felt it. The walls he usually kept around his feelings were down. Maybe he thought he was alone. Maybe he was too tired to maintain them. Either way, Yuna felt his emotions clearly for the first time, and they nearly broke her heart. There was loneliness. Deep, endless loneliness that stretched back years and years. There was guilt, heavy as a mountain, pressing down on his soul, and there was grief so sharp it felt like a knife in Yuna's own chest. "You lost someone," she said softly, sitting beside him on the wall. Taiho did not look at her. He kept staring at the stars. But she felt his surprise that she was there, followed by a tired acceptance. "Everyone has," he said. His voice was quiet, heavy. "That's why we fight. Will you tell me?" For a long moment, he was silent. Yuna thought he would refuse. Humans were private about their pain, she had heard. They buried it deep inside and pretended it did not exist. But then he spoke. Her name was Yunji, my younger sister. She was 17 when the Dominion attacked our colony world. I was off-planet fighting in another sector. I couldn't get back in time." He paused. His hands tightened into fists. "I found her body 3 days later. She had been trying to protect a group of younger children when they killed her." Yuna felt tears forming in her violet eyes. Through their connection, she experienced echoes of his memory. The smoke, the ruins, the small, broken body of a girl who had been brave when it mattered most. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The words felt useless. Too small for such enormous pain. After that, I made a promise. Taiho finally looked at her. His eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. "Every person I protect, every child I save, I do it for her. I couldn't save Yunji, but I can save others. I can make sure no one else has to find their sister's body in the ruins of their home." Yuna understood now. The fierce protectiveness, the willingness to die for strangers. The inability to walk away from someone who needed help. It was not bloodlust or broken psychology. It was love. Love transformed into action. Love that refused to let tragedy happen again if there was any way to prevent it. "The other species say humans fight because you enjoy it," she said. Taiho laughed. It was a sad, tired sound. "Some do, but most of us. We fight because we can't stand watching others suffer. It breaks something inside us. We feel everything so strongly. When someone else hurts, we hurt too. Fighting is it's just how we try to stop the pain. For us, and for everyone else." He looked at her. Really looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "Your people think we're monsters because we're violent. But violence is just a tool. It's like fire. You can use fire to burn down a home, or you can use it to keep people warm. What matters is why you use it and what you're trying to protect. Yuna felt the truth of his words resonating through her telepathy. There was no deception. No hidden darkness. Just a man carrying an impossible weight because he believed it was his duty to carry it. Just a man who had loved so deeply that losing that love had changed him forever. "You carry so much pain," she said. "How do you keep going?" Taiho smiled. It was a small smile, but genuine. Because somewhere out there, right now, someone is scared. Someone is hurt. Someone is alone. And maybe if I keep fighting, I can reach them in time. I can be the help that comes. I couldn't save my sister. But every day, I get another chance to save someone else's sister. Someone else's daughter. Someone else's mother or father or friend. He looked back at the stars. That's enough reason to get up every morning. That's enough reason to keep breathing. Yuna sat with him in silence until the sun came up. She did not say anything else. She did not need to. For the first time since meeting him, she did not feel afraid of his burning emotions. She felt grateful for them. Because she finally understood that the fire inside Taiho was not dangerous. It was a light that guided him through darkness. A warmth that he wanted to share with everyone he met. Her grandmother had been wrong. Humans were not broken creatures who burned too brightly. They were warriors who had chosen to fight for love instead of hate. The warning came too late. By the time the alarm sounded, the Dominion's main fleet had already surrounded the station. Hundreds of warships hung in the space around them like predators circling wounded prey. Evacuation was impossible. Escape was impossible. They were trapped. Captain Hannah's voice came through every speaker in the station. "All personnel, prepare for siege conditions. The Alliance fleet is coming, but they are 8 hours away. We need to hold until they arrive. Every soldier to their position. Every medic to the medical bay. This is not a drill. This is survival." Yuna ran through the crowded corridors toward the medical bay. Around her, refugees were screaming and crying. Soldiers were rushing to defensive positions. The entire station had become a hive of fear and desperate activity. She felt Taiho before she saw him. His emotional presence had become familiar to her over the past weeks. She could find him in a crowd of thousands just by following the burning warmth of his determination. He fell into step beside her, rifle in hand, eyes scanning every corner and shadow. "Stay close to me. When we reach the medical bay, you focus on healing. I'll handle everything else." "There are too many of them," Yuna said. Her voice was shaking. "Even for humans, this is impossible." Taiho looked at her. His dark eyes held something she had seen many times now. Not fear, not resignation. Just pure, stubborn refusal to accept defeat. "Impossible just means no one has done it yet," he said. "Today we become the first." Ah! The Dominion began their attack with missiles and bombs. The station shook under the impacts. Walls cracked. Lights exploded. Yuna stumbled, and Taiho caught her arm. Keeping her upright without slowing down, they reached the medical bay just as the first wave of wounded arrived. Soldiers and refugees with burns, broken bones, and plasma wounds. Yuna threw herself into her work, using her healing powers until her silver skin began to dim from exhaustion. But no matter how fast she worked, more wounded kept coming. Through it all, she felt Taiho. He was outside the medical bay, part of the defensive line. She experienced his emotions through their bond, each feeling hitting her like physical blows. Pain when his shields were overwhelmed. Determination when he pushed forward anyway. Fear not for himself, but for the people behind him who could not fight. Hours passed like years. The Dominion soldiers pushed deeper into the station. The defensive lines fell back one by one. Yuna heard explosions getting closer. She heard screaming getting louder. She heard the sounds of battle, moving toward the medical bay like a rising flood. Then she felt something that made her blood run cold. Taiho's pain suddenly became sharper, stronger. Something had happened to him. He was hurt badly. She wanted to run to him. Every part of her soul screamed to go find him and heal him. But there were 40 wounded patients in the medical bay who would die without her. She could not leave them, so she stayed. And she prayed to every god she knew that Tai-Ho would survive. The door to the medical bay exploded inward. Dominion soldiers poured through the opening. Their weapons were raised. Their cold eyes showed no mercy. Behind Yuna, patients screamed in terror. There was nowhere to run. This was the end. Then Tai-Ho appeared in the doorway. Yuna gasped at the sight of him. His armor was broken and burned. Blood ran down his face from a deep cut on his forehead. One arm hung useless at his side, clearly broken. Behind him, the corridor was filled with the bodies of fallen enemies. Dozens of them. Maybe more. He had fought his way through an army to reach her. "Get behind me," he said. His voice was rough with pain, but still steady. Still commanding. "Tai-Ho, you can't fight them. Not like this. You'll die." He looked at her over his shoulder. In his eyes, she saw no fear. Only certainty. Only peace. "As long as I'm breathing, nothing touches you. Nothing touches them." He nodded toward the patients. "That's a promise." He turned to face the Dominion soldiers. He raised his rifle with his one good arm. Blood dripped from his wounds onto the floor. He should have been unconscious. He should have been dead. But he was standing. He was fighting. He was human. The Dominion soldiers hesitated. Yuna felt their emotions through her. Telepathy, confusion, uncertainty, and beneath it all, a growing fear. They had heard stories about humans, just like she had. They knew about the creatures from the death world who refused to stop fighting, who would crawl forward on broken legs and fight with their teeth, who did not understand the meaning of surrender. They were looking at the proof of those stories. A man who had walked through hell, broken and bleeding, and was still ready for more. "Come on then," Tai-Ho said quietly. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Let's see who gives up first." For a moment, nobody moved. The Dominion soldiers stared at the bloody human blocking their path. Tai-Ho stared back with eyes that held no surrender. Then the Dominion broke. The soldiers in front turned and ran. The ones behind them followed. In seconds, the doorway was empty. The enemy had retreated, driven back not by superior numbers or better weapons, but by the unbreakable will of a single human. Tai-Ho stood in the doorway for another 30 seconds, making sure they were truly gone. Then his legs gave out. He collapsed against the doorframe, sliding down to sit on the floor. His weapon dropped from his shaking hand. Yuna ran to him. She fell to her knees beside him and began pouring her healing energy into his broken body. Tears streamed down her silver face, but she did not stop working. "Stay with me," she begged. "Please, Tai-Ho, don't leave me." He smiled at her. It was a weak smile, but real. "Told you," he whispered. "I'd keep you safe. You stupid, stubborn, impossible human." She was crying and healing at the same time, pushing all her remaining power into saving him. "You almost died. You almost left me alone. Worth it." His eyes were closing. His voice was fading. "You're alive. They're all alive. Worth it." The Alliance reinforcements arrived 2 hours later. They found a station battered but standing. They found defenders exhausted but victorious. They found Yuna still kneeling beside Tai-Ho, refusing to leave his side, holding his hand while he slept, the deep sleep of the nearly dead. And they found the corridor outside the medical bay, filled with the evidence of what one human soldier had done to protect the people behind him. The rescue commander, a veteran of many battles, looked at the scene and shook his head in amazement. "Humans," he said quietly. "They never know when they're supposed to die." Yuna looked up at him with tired violet eyes. "No," she said. "They just care about something more than living." Tai-Ho recovered. Of course he did. Humans always recovered. Their bodies were stubborn that way, refusing to quit even when every reasonable species would have accepted death. It took 3 weeks in the medical ward and 4 reconstructive surgeries. But eventually Tai-Ho opened his eyes and smiled at Yuna, like he had not been minutes away from dying. "How long was I out?" he asked. His voice was rough but strong. 23 days. Yuna sat beside his bed, where she had spent most of her free time since the siege ended. The doctor said you should have died at least 4 times. Your heart stopped twice on the operating table. They had to grow you a new arm. Taiho looked at his left arm, flexing the fingers experimentally. It feels pretty good. Maybe better than the original. You almost died. It almost doesn't count. He smiled at her. It was the same gentle smile he had given her before collapsing in the medical bay doorway. Besides, I made a promise. Had to keep it. Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes again. She had cried more in the past month than she had in her entire life before meeting this human. He had broken something open inside her. Or maybe he had healed something that had been broken for a long time. You're impossible, she said. I'm human. Same thing. The news of what happened at the station spread quickly through the Alliance. Stories traveled from ship to ship, planet to planet. The tale of the human soldier who had single-handedly held back a Dominion assault force while broken and bleeding, the man who had refused to fall because people behind him still needed protection. Other species began requesting human partners for the integration program. The demand was so high that Earth's united fleet could not fill all the assignments. Everyone wanted what Yuna had once feared. They wanted a human at their side. Captain Hannah called Yuna into her office 1 month after the siege. The program has been declared a massive success, Hannah said. She was a small human woman with gray hair and kind eyes. Alliance Command wants to expand it significantly. They're asking all current participants to write reports about their experiences working with their partners. Yuna nodded. She had been expecting this. I will write my report tonight. I've read preliminary reports from other Volari participants. Most of them are still cautious about humans. They acknowledge the effectiveness of human soldiers but maintain concerns about emotional compatibility. Hannah looked at Yuna with curious eyes. Your partnership with Taiho seems different. You've stayed by his side throughout his recovery. You requested permanent assignment together. Can you tell me why? Yuna thought carefully about her answer. So many words could describe what she had learned about Taiho and his species. So many observations and experiences that had changed her understanding completely. But in the end she said something simple. I was matched with a human. I have never been safer in my life. She wrote her official report that night, sitting in her quarters while the stars turned slowly outside her window. She wrote about everything she had seen and felt. She wrote about her initial fear and how it had melted away like ice in sunlight. She wrote about the small kindnesses and enormous sacrifices that seemed to be part of human nature. We have misunderstood humans entirely, she concluded. They are not monsters who enjoy violence. They are not broken creatures who have lost control of their emotions. They are a species that feels everything deeply. Love and loss. Hope and despair. Joy and grief. And they have chosen, as a people, to channel that intensity into protection rather than destruction. She paused, thinking about Taiho teaching children to play games. Taiho giving away his food to hungry refugees. Taiho holding dying soldiers of species not his own, simply so they would not die alone. They are not broken, she wrote. They are simply more compassionate, more stubborn, more willing to sacrifice themselves for others. Where other species have learned to survive by avoiding danger, humans have learned to survive by facing it head-on. They run toward the fire instead of away from it. And they do this not because they do not fear death, but because they fear failing the people who need them even more. She saved the report and sent it to Alliance Command. Then she went to visit Taiho. He was sitting up in his bed, looking out the window at the stars. The same stars he had stared at the night he told her about his sister. The same stars that had witnessed all his grief and all his determination. I wrote my report, she said, sitting beside him. What did you say? The truth? That humans are exactly what the galaxy needs right now. Not because of your weapons or your combat skills, but because of your hearts. Aho looked at her. His dark eyes were soft in the starlight. That's a nice thing to say about a species you were terrified of a few months ago. I was wrong to be afraid. Yuna took his hand. She no longer flinched at the flood of his emotions. They had become familiar. Welcome. Like coming home after a long journey. My grandmother warned me about humans. She said you burn too brightly, that you would drag me into your fire and burn me too. And now? Yuna smiled. Now I understand. You do burn brightly. You feel everything so intensely that it could destroy you. But instead of letting it destroy you, you use that fire to light the way for others. You burn so that people lost in darkness can find their way home. She squeezed his hand. I'm not afraid of your fire anymore, Taiho. I'm grateful for it. And I'm grateful for you. Taiho was quiet for a long moment. His emotions flowed through their connection. Warmth, affection, a deep, peaceful happiness that she had never felt from him before. The shadow of grief was still there, the memory of his sister that would never fully fade. But it was no longer the only thing he carried. Now, there was also hope. So, he said finally, what happens now? Now we keep fighting, together. You protect me from the dangers I cannot face alone. I heal the wounds you collect along the way. And together, we show the galaxy what humans and Valari can accomplish when they stop being afraid of each other. That sounds like a lot of work. Probably... Are you ready for it? Taiho grinned. It was the same grin he had worn while playing games with refugee children. The same grin he wore when facing impossible odds. I'm human, he said. We're always ready for things that sound impossible, Yuna laughed. It was a free, joyful sound that surprised even her. A few months ago, she could not have imagined laughing with a human. Now she could not imagine her life without one. Outside the window, the stars continued their eternal dance. Somewhere out there, the war was still raging. The Dominion was still threatening innocent lives. The galaxy still needed protecting. But for now, in this small room, a Valari healer and a human soldier sat together in peaceful silence. Two species that had been taught to fear each other, finding instead a bond stronger than any fear. This was the truth about humans, Yuna realized. They did not just protect with their weapons and their stubborn refusal to die. They protected with their hearts, with their capacity to love fiercely and completely, with their choice to see strangers as worthy of sacrifice. And once you understood that truth, you could never be afraid of them again. You could only be grateful that they were on your side.